What's up, Canuck fans? Welcome to The Line Change, a Vancouver Canucks podcast, which is a presentation of DraftKings Sportsbook, as well as a proud member of the Hockey Podcast Network. Be sure to check out the network for your favorite podcast covering your favorite team at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com, the home of hockey podcasts, where it's every team, everywhere. Now, Shane Wright isn't thriving in the Kraken system, and he represents an opportunity for the Vancouver Canucks. Is this the exact type of player that the Canucks need to be targeting right now? We know their center depth needs work and is an urgent need that they have to address. Is Shane Wright the answer to that? Let's go ahead and take a look at an article that talks about how the Seattle Kraken have actually made, apparently, Shane Wright available. They are considering moving him in a trade. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. It would be fair to wonder if this is a case of good headline, bad idea. But on the occasion, this idea about a trade between two Pacific Northwest rivals might actually have some sand to it. There has been plenty of chatter about Seattle Kraken center Shane Wright of late and about whether or not he's quietly requested a trade behind the scenes. The word on the street is that Wright is unhappy with his ice time and the lack of opportunity as a top six center for the Kraken. And Elliot Friedman more or less confirmed this speculation. Speaking on an episode of his 32 Thoughts podcast, Friedman said the Shane Wright stuff, that he's available out there and Kraken are considering moving him, that's real. Initially, you kind of wonder, okay, is this the agent rattling the cages here or something like that? And I was told, no, this is real. If the interest in trading Wright is real, then the Vancouver Canucks should be really interested in making a bid. After all, he's a young center looking for a top six opportunity, and the Canucks are still very much on the lookout for a center with long-term top six potential. There's a match to be made here. For a player who has only played 145 NHL games as of this writing, spread across 4 seasons, and only achieved 69 points in those games thus far, Wright is a bit of a surprisingly household name. This is largely because he spent the bulk of his pre-draft seasons as a presumed first overall selection before falling to 4th overall in the 22 NHL entry draft. Wright made headlines for the glare he supposedly shot at the Montreal Canadiens, who picked Juraj Slafkovsky with the first pick, though it's debatable whether that actually happened or not. The point is that even though he struggled a bit since arriving in the NHL, everyone already knew who he was when he got there. Wright, who turned 22 just a couple of weeks ago, has had a very up and down career. So far, he was clearly not ready for NHL action as of 2022, but at 18, he had only that or a return to the OHL as options. The Kraken kept him up at first, then used a conditioning stint loophole to send him to the AHL for a while before finally relenting and reassigning him in to the Windsor Spitfires for the remainder of the regular season. Then it was back to the Coachella Valley Firebirds for a run to the Calder Cup Finals. The Kraken got permission to assign the then 19-year-old Wright to the AHL for his second season, and he wound up breaking out at that level with 49 points in 57 games, along with 5 points in 8 games across various NHL call-ups. Firebirds once again reached the Calder Cup Finals, and although Wright suffered an injury along the way, he still managed 13 points in 12 postseason games. He seemed ready for his proper NHL arrival. With 8 games each in his previous 2 seasons, Wright had lost his Calder Trophy eligibility, but 24-25 was still his rookie season for all intents and purposes. That said, it was a fairly successful one. Wright stayed in the big leagues all year and put up 44 points in 79 games. Had he been an actual rookie, those 44 points would have tied him with Cutter Gauthier for 5th place in rookie scoring. But 2 things also happened in the 24-25 season that got in the way of Wright's ability to sustain that momentum. One was the Kraken signing Chandler Stevenson to an outsized UFA contract that almost obligated them to play him as a top 6 center moving forward. The other was a simultaneous breakout of Matty Beniers, the center drafted at 2nd overall the year before Wright. As the 24-25 season turned into the current 25-26 campaign, it became clear which center the Kraken preferred. Wright became the consistent third center in the rotation in 24-25. Wright averaged 14 minutes and 4 seconds to Beniers' 18 minutes and 41 seconds and Stevenson's 19 minutes and 31 seconds. And through 50 games of this current season, Wright has somehow managed to lose ground. He's playing an average of just 13 minutes and 46 seconds this year to Beniers' 19 minutes and 42 seconds and Stevenson's 19 minutes and 45 seconds. In fact, Wright's ice time has dwindled continually downward, with him playing a season-low 9 minutes and 47 seconds against the Pittsburgh Penguins this past Monday. Conveniently enough, that rundown of Wright's career to date also neatly sets up exactly why the Canucks would be interested in him, and it's all about the untapped 1C potential. Heading into his draft year, Wright was always assumed to have top-line upside. You don't get talked about as a potential first overall selection without that. Now, Wright was never hyped to the level of a Sidney Crosby or Macklin Celebrini or even a Connor Bedard, but the assumption was that Wright profiled as a 1C type at the very least and had some potential to be a franchise player. Some of that shine has obviously worn off in the interim, but not all of it, and there's an argument to be made that the circumstances of his place on the Kraken depth chart have conspired to slow his progress. That Wright managed to produce so well last season after being yo-yoed around the previous years, mostly from the third line, and at the age of 20 speaks volume to his considerable offensive skills. It is true that Wright has struggled on the defensive side of the game, even in 25-26, with his minutes decidedly sheltered. Wright is in the mid-40s on stats like Corsi, expected goals, and control of shots and scoring chances. That, more than anything, is why Beniers has skyrocketed past Wright in the Kraken's estimation. But to be blunt, that's less important than one might think. The Canucks' interest in Wright should be all about the top end, and that top end is all about scoring. A team needs a top-line center and a good one in order to be competitive. There's ample debate about whether or not Elias Pettersson still qualifies, and even if he does, he may not any longer by the time the Canucks are aiming to contend again. There are plenty of 2C candidates kicking around like Marco Rossi and Braden Coots, or even a healthy Philip Hedl, but if there's an obvious missing piece in the Canucks' rebuild plans, it's top-line scoring talent and a future 1C in particular. Typically, those sorts of players mostly come from the draft and are mostly obtained by teams with high draft picks. The Canucks will achieve a high pick in 2026. The top offensive players in this draft are wingers. The opportunity to pick such a player via trade should not be overlooked. Yes, it's true that Wright is no longer a quote-unquote sure thing and may not end up as a 1C at the end of the day, but then again, no sure thing 22-year-old future 1C is ever going to be available via trade. For the Canucks, a true future 1C is either going to come from a future draft or is going to come from taking a risk on the former potential of someone who hasn't quite realized it yet. And on that front, Wright is the only name we know to definitively be on the market. To steal such a player from a divisional rival would be the icing on the cake, but that's also a reason why the asking price may not be to Vancouver's liking. Friedman mentioned that the Kraken are similarly looking for top-line talent in a deal. That's one thing Seattle has always looked at, is trying to find a dynamic offensive player. That's kind of one of the things that they've never really had. Friedman said they have Beniers, who's a talented guy, but they've never had that kind of young dynamic scorer. I think what they're hoping is that maybe Wright can get them that and see where it goes, which sounds like a tough start to any Vancouver-Seattle negotiations. The Canucks are notoriously short on dynamic offense right now, and what they have, they can't really afford to give up, especially given that Friedman specifies a quote-unquote young talent. With the Kraken only 2 points back of a playoff spot, as of this writing, one wonders whether they could be enticed to take an older player. Were that player good enough? On that front, we're thinking something around a Connor Garland for a Shane Wright deal, although that might feel awkward as Garland has made it his personal mission to fight as many Kraken as possible these last few seasons. That's actually pretty funny. If the Kraken insist on someone young and dynamic, however, the Canucks are probably Georgia Strait out of luck. Vancouver could offer up Jonathan Lekaramaki, who is young, a dynamic, sure, but they'd be adding a bunch on top of him to even get Seattle to pick up the phone. In the end, Seattle probably aims to trade Wright's potential as far away as possible, meaning to the east. Friedman speculated about a Wright for Alexis Lafreniere trade, and if something like that is on the table, the Canucks would probably not be able to put together a competitive bid. Wright is, in other words, an excellent trade target for the Canucks, but he might not be a very realistic one, unless Friedman is way off on the Kraken's trading intentions. I know that was a bit of a mouthful. So, but there you go. The realistically, the Canucks probably aren't in the Shane Wright sweepstakes because they do not have the assets in order to acquire a player like this. But speaking of Shane Wright, let's bring up Shane Wright and do a bit of a refresher course on him. So here we go. Shane Wright, in year 2 of his ELC, I believe this is his ELC. He will be a RFA in his age 23 season, which is 2027. He won't be a UFA until 2031, as you guys can see there. So as you guys can see, this season, 18 points in 51 games for Shane Wright, and that's him even playing, as we mentioned, on the third line and having recently only been getting like 9 minutes of ice time. So, but let's go back to the 2022 NHL draft and just give us a little refresher course on that as well. For this, we're just going to look at the first round, the same round that Shane Wright was actually drafted in. So let's take a look at this. So as you can see here, Slavkovsky, first overall, Simon Nemec, second, Logan Cooley was drafted third by the Coyotes, and then there you have Shane Wright at fourth overall with the Kraken. Cutter Gauthier was drafted one spot behind him, followed by David Juracek, Kevin Korchinski to the Blackhawks, Marco Kasper to the Red Wings, Matthew Savoie to the Buffalo Sabres. Obviously, of course, Savoie now is with the Edmonton Oilers. Pavel Miantukov with the Anaheim Ducks. Then you have Connor Geekie, Denton Matejchuk, Frank Nazar, Rutger McGrody, and then you have Jonathan Lekaramaki, who was drafted in the same draft year as Wright, who we mentioned as a possible, someone that the Canucks could maybe look at maybe trading in order to acquire Shane Wright. But obviously, as the article stated, they would probably have to add maybe sweeteners or whatnot to it. And I'm not too sure that the Canucks exactly have those. You have Noah Ostland, Joaquin Kernell, Liam Bichel, and hey, there you go. You got another Vancouver Canuck, Liam Ogren. Obviously, at the time, he was drafted by the Minnesota Wild. And then you have a name I cannot even pronounce, Miro Schenko, and Owen Pickering. So, but going back to Shane Wright, let's take a look at his stats over the last few seasons, starting with the 22-23 season. Obviously, it was mentioned he only played 8 games. He had 2 points, so a goal and an assist. But his expected goals, his goals for percentage was 83.3. His expected goals was 60.0, and that is quite good. His Corsi was, of course, 42. And then his goals per 60 was 0.93. Then his points per 60 was 1.86. Moving over to 23-24, once again, 8 games with the Seattle Kraken. But in this one, he had 5 points in 8 games, 4 goals, and 1 assist. His goals for was 55.6. His expected goals for was 62, so slightly above the previous year. His Corsi was 58, and then his goals per 60 was 2.66, as was his points per 60 as well. And then you could classify his first official season with the NHL. At the age of 20, 44 points in 79 games, 19 goals, 25 assists. Obviously, those stats really jump off the page, at least for me. Almost scoring 20 goals in 79 games. His goals for was 55.1, and then his expected goals was a 46, so it was a slight decrease from the year before. And then his Corsi was 47. Once again, another bit of a decrease. And then you had his goals per 60 was at a 0.78. another decrease from the year prior, and then his points per 60 was 2.01. And then, of course, this season he has 18 points in 51 games. But the kid is young. Perhaps it's just not working in Seattle. And maybe he, how we've talked about Elias Pettersson might need a change of scenery. Seems like you could put Shane Wright in that boat as well. But going back here, here's it. There we go. Obviously, they mention it in the article, but could the Canucks say involve Connor Garland in a trade package for Shane Wright, or maybe even Lekaramaki, as you mentioned, or another younger player that they have to try and get right? Would they need to include a draft pick to get a deal done? Obviously, the Canucks aren't going to trade a 2026 pick, as they've made it known that they want to keep their draft capital for this upcoming draft and be able to draft 7 times, perhaps more if they can get more picks in this draft from trades. Obviously, when it comes to like Evander Kane, you could easily get another draft pick over that. Might not be a top-end draft pick, perhaps a later round pick, but they would still have another draft pick in this 2026 draft. Do you guys think would acquiring Shane Wright help accelerate our rebuild due to Wright's age, being only 22 years old, and the Canucks, of course, eyeing talent in their early to mid-20s? Obviously, realistically, another team could very easily outbid the Canucks for Wright's services, a team that is flush with assets that the Kraken would be interested in acquiring. One team, of course, being the Winnipeg Jets. I've heard Cole Perfetti's name in the rumor mill, and the Kraken Jets doing perhaps a Perfetti for Wright swap. I don't know if it would be a direct one, 1-for-1, or involve other assets. But if the Jets were to offer that to the Kraken, the Canucks would have no chance at getting Shane Wright, because the Jets obviously have a lot more assets for to give up in order to acquire Shane Wright. But I still thought this was a worthy topic to discuss. I want to give a shout out and thank you to my sponsor, DraftKings, which is an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Never experienced the jaw-dropping moments that make hockey? Well, you can experience them all with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Missouri listeners, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me State. New customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN, that's code THPN, to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-9777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Pass-through per wager may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. This is a limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025, all rights reserved. I'd like to thank my secondary sponsor, none other than Gassy Jack Art, maker of this amazing artwork you see right here in front of you. And you guys can get some artwork of your own at GassyJackArt.com. So getting back to Shane Wright, and just giving you guys my general thoughts on this. When I first heard and saw this, obviously, I was like, Shane Wright, he's a former 4th overall pick. Yeah, I absolutely would love a player of the caliber of him. I know, as we've touched on, he hasn't really panned out in Seattle. Perhaps there was too high expectations for him when the Kraken drafted him. and he's just not really lived up to the expectations. Obviously, there's word going around that he's behind the scenes, at least, perhaps requested a trade. He's not happy being in Seattle, and he wants a fresh start. Wants to go somewhere where he can actually play, and where he's not relegated to 9 minutes of ice time and is in the top 6. But as we've kind of gone over, Canucks don't really have the assets to acquire a guy like this, unless Seattle maybe changes what they want in return. And it's like what I pose, the question I pose in the title: is he worth the price? No, are the Canucks going to have to maybe overpay to acquire Shane Wright when other teams, such as the Winnipeg Jets, may not have to overpay? But could this be a possibility? Like I mentioned, I like him as a player. He's a good young kid, and I think he would absolutely do wonders for the Vancouver Canucks if they were able to acquire him. It actually kind of makes me wonder, had the Canucks not done the Kiefer Sherwood trade to San Jose, could they have maybe gotten a deal done with Sherwood, involved in the package? Obviously, it would not be a Sherwood for Wright 1-for-1. Canucks would probably still have to, add, a sweetener or two, maybe even a draft pick. But I do like the idea of acquiring Shane Wright from the Seattle Kraken. Honestly, the whole trading within your division thing doesn't really bother me all that much because it is the Seattle Kraken. But I do basically, to give my answer on the question that is posed, is he worth the price? And that's, draft capital or giving up on a guy like Lekaramaki, or even someone like Breeden Coots, Liam Ogren. I'm going to say the price is not worth it, for a guy like Shane Wright. So that is my personal opinion. I want to know what you guys think about this whole Shane Wright to the Canucks thing. Do you guys like the idea of bringing in a guy like Shane Wright to help with that center depth? And do you guys think that it could potentially, if the Canucks were to go out and acquire him, would it help accelerate this rebuild that the Canucks are currently in? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Quick shout out and thank you to my sponsors once again, DraftKings and Gassy Jack Art. And if you guys like this video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks content, be sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a single video. Also, we're selling our own merchandise, so go ahead, check out our merchandise store. We are currently selling our 1-year anniversary collection, something that we are rapidly approaching. I actually looked up what our 1-year anniversary is technically, and I believe it's February 14th, so Valentine's Day. Go ahead, check it out. It has our completely redesigned logo, both in blue and green, and our skate version of the logo. And even I have to say that black hoodie with the skate logo looks absolutely fire, as does the white one. So go ahead and check it out at thelinechangepodcast.threadless.com. Also, if you want to have more discussions and conversations like this one, join our official Discord. There's a link to it in the description down below. It's completely free to join, so go ahead and do so. Also, if you want to find and interact with us on social media, we're everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, even Blue Sky. Feel free to give us a follow on all of our social media platforms. Speaking of platforms, if you prefer an audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. On Spotify, feel free to give us a follow, as well as rate and review us on either platform. It is, of course, greatly appreciated, and it really helps out the podcast. Something else that also helps out the podcast, and if you had a favorite episode that you just want to watch over and over again, feel free to download your favorite episode and also tell your friends to download their favorite episodes as well. That too also really helps out the podcast. And of course, we are greatly appreciative of that as well. But that's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys in the next video. And as always, go Canucks, go.